Good morning, everyone. It's Rollie with Chatting with Wisdom. So, welcome back to another Chatting with Wisdom. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Rollie Allaire. Gigodo Migwin is my spirit name, and I'm your host of Chatting with Wisdom. Chatting with Wisdom is a weekly interview series that features women. However, today we will not be having one of our featured women that are going to be joining us. But one of the things that's really important with Chatting with Wisdom is being able to celebrate the amazing ways that all the amazing things that women are. And so I invite you to join me in my private Facebook group, Mind, Body, Heart, and Soul Connection. And we also have a similar group on Telegram. And so today I would like to welcome Dr. I should have actually asked you the pronunciation. So Dr. Varun Gandhi. Did I say that correctly?
Varun Gandhi.
Varunda. Okay. And so he is a soulpreneur, inventor, philanthropist, and a water doctor. While slaving in a career that he didn't care about, he started feeling these pains in his solar plexus. The pain became unbearable in 3 months. Several times he would ask, "What is this pain telling me?" Every time one question would pop up, "Why are you still working at this job?" It was justified with many stories until it wasn't enough. He quit his job and began a journey into the world of soulpreneurship. Lost no purpose, no ideas, and no direction. He didn't have a clue and didn't want to admit it. Thus began an exploration, an adventure for the caterpillar towards the blossoming into a new butterfly. So, welcome. How are you?
Doing fantastic. Thank you so much, Rollie. Love and abundance, everyone.
And to you. And I love that story. I love that you actually listened to your body. And I always think that it's always very ironic when things come into play. And I know that it's not irony. It really isn't irony. And I know that it is about being able to have things come to play. So in our Soulful Life Hacks group, which is my group coaching program, and we actually talked about listening to the signs that our bodies are trying to tell us. And so here you are sharing how listening to your body created this new adventure that you're on. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. So, uh, the way it began was the way my journey into me listening to my body was that pain in my solar plexus. It started off very small, and I kind of ignored it for a couple months. And finally, when it became like when I'd wake up in the morning, it was bam, it was right there in my face. And so I knew I couldn't do anything about it. I didn't want to feel like that. So eventually, about 3, 4 months into it, I made the decision that, hey, I don't want to feel like this. Let me do something about it. So then I started asking questions. Uh, and to be honest, at this point, I was very unconscious. So this whole process of asking questions happened kind of unconsciously. I wasn't really thinking about it, but it just happened in the background. And one of the answers I got was that, why are you getting up to go to this job that you don't really care about? I mean, even though your bills are paid, even though you're making enough money to live a comfortable life, I felt at that point that there was something else out there for me and that this job wasn't it. And that thus began this exploration. And the thing is, it's funny how it works because I'd received signs even earlier than this one, but I didn't pay attention to it. Uh, so this was, around the time I was graduating. So right before I started my master's program, in between my bachelor's and my master's, I did a 3 month summer internship, which essentially was the same thing as I was doing in the consulting job. During that job, the 3 month internship, I realized that I don't want to be doing this. I don't want to be sitting in front of a computer in a cubicle working with data and Excel sheets and even at that point, I was also doing field projects, going out into the streets and working on the streets as well. But I didn't really enjoy it. And I had this in the back of my mind that this is not it for me. And because of this feeling, I went from a master's to a PhD directly. And so instead of staying in school for a year for my master's, I stayed in school for 5.5 years for my master's and my PhD. Just
Okay.
because I didn't want to make that decision. I didn't want to, I just kick the can down the road and see what happens. But then again, when I graduated, I went back to doing that same job. And finally, a year and a half later, I felt that pain in my solar plexus. And this time I couldn't ignore it. like really, really strong, really powerful. And if I hadn't, yeah, I mean, I'm so glad that I really listened and tuned into my body. And how that shows up now is I utilize that the signs that my body is giving to tell me if I am, for example, eating the right foods, right? The foods that are nutritious, that my body needs. But if I have pains in my body, if I have pains in my stomach, if I have, bloating, any other kind of feeling that I don't want to feel, then I know that this food right here is something that I need to remove from my system. It's not good for me. Limit it. You can eat it, but limit it. Knowing, fully aware that this is what's going to happen once I put it into my system. So this is one of the ways that I use it right now to determine, what's good for me, what's not good for me.
Nice. And I really like that. I like how you actually have learned to be able to tune in. And the other thing that you said that was really interesting, that I think that a lot of people forget, is that you chose to you may still choose to eat it consciously, knowing what the outcome potentially is going to be. So if there's something, because people are like, yeah, well, I don't want to have to give up all of these things, or I don't want to have to, but it's about being able to have that conscious understanding of, if I do this, this is what's going to happen, and my body is going to react in such a way. And so I really love how you're pointing that part out, because it doesn't mean having to eliminate it entirely. It just means knowing what's going to happen if, right?
Yeah, exactly. And like, for example, coffee, or like potatoes, for example. Potatoes gets me bloated. So anytime I eat potatoes, I see potatoes, I'm like, okay, I know how I'm going to feel. So prepare my body, prepare myself that at some point in the night, tomorrow morning, I'm going to have some kind of bloated sensations, going to have some kind of pain in my stomach. So be prepared for it. Enjoy the meal right now. That's one thing. Don't shame yourself while you're eating it.
Yeah.
Enjoy the meal right now. And then later on, just be like, in terms of coffee, is something that I'm working on giving up. And the reason is I feel very jittery when I drink it, and that effect lasts. If I drink it in the morning, it lasts all the way to like afternoon time. I don't really enjoy that sensation. So what I do now is every time I drink coffee, which is maybe once a week, maybe even less than that, I pay attention to my body, and I really look for the proof for why I don't want to continue this practice in the future. Meaning I look for these signs, and I'm strengthening that. I'm strengthening those reasons in my
Yeah.
mind. Like, okay, this is the reason I'm not doing it. I'm going to enjoy it right now, today. But I know that the next time I drink it was going to, the gap is going to get longer and longer every time I drink it. And I
Yeah.
use that kind of feeling, the feeling that my body gives out, to, kind of decide on what I want to do and how long I want to continue this practice.
And that makes it all so much better and so much easier when we're doing what it is that we need to do. So and I love how, and this really ties into the topic title that you chose, is how stories boost my confidence. And so being able to, because like you said, being able to tune in, and so listening to how things have worked for you makes somebody say, oh, maybe that's what's going on with me. Oh, okay, maybe that's something that's happening. When we have an anxious mind, we want to try and stay away from that a little bit, because otherwise we're going to have everybody's ailments. But really being able to focus on like, oh, okay, so maybe, and listening to the people's successes, right? So we don't have to follow somebody's journey precisely. It's about what is your story. We all have a story, and how can we make that storyline change and shift based on what it is that's happening? Is that kind of where what, in terms of what you were referring to in terms of that title?
Yeah, exactly. It's really understanding what is playing out in your mind. What stories are we creating based on everything that we see, right? For example, let's say we went through a certain set of experiences, like 2 3 experiences, and now we're trying to connect the dots and make sense of it. That's a story that we are creating, because if someone else were looking at those same set of situations, those same set of experiences, they're going to come up with a completely different story based on their past, based on all
Yeah.
of the memories that they have accumulated. And so this storytelling mechanism is happening constantly in our lives. Every moment we're creating something in our minds to make sense of the situation, make sense of the experience of our lives. And we have the power to change that story. We choose the particular story that we use to create all of our stories. We choose that. And we have the power to shift that, but you have to do it consciously, because the stories that we're currently playing out in our minds is very unconscious, is, in a sense, you didn't put it there because it may have been programmed in the past, it may have been programmed when you were a child, and all of these things are running in our background. So what helped me was meditating, because at some point I was very angry. Anytime that anger would show up, I would have to do something to release it, and that would look like throwing something across the room to make a loud sound or something like that. So I would, like, really physical in my expression of anger. And I realized, like, this is not something that I want to continue in my future. And along the same time, I also gotten through a breakup, and this was right before I graduated my PhD. So as I was going through the breakup and past the breakup, I had a lot of pain and suffering. And once I graduated, I moved for the job. I moved to Idaho, which is a state that I'd never heard of at that point. And I moved out there. So that kind of represented this move into the cave, into going into the darkness, and kind of working with this, because I was already in that pain and suffering for about 6 months at that point. I moved to a state where I didn't know anyone. I could have utilized that situation to really renew myself and refresh myself. But instead, what I did is, because the pain and suffering was so overbearing, I chose to distract myself from all of that pain and suffering. And so I would, hang out with friends, watch TV, drink lots of alcohol, anything I could do to kill that pain, right? But a year and a half later, all I realized that I was really killing was my body and my mind, with all of the fast foods, with all the alcohol, with continuously not giving my system a break. It was every weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, every weekend, without fail. And once I realized, like, hey, I am killing myself, I don't want to feel like this anymore. So I finally slowed down, and I slowed down. And one of the things I did was I picked up this book by Deepak Chopra called The Book of Secrets. And The Book of Secrets is a high level understanding of spirituality. And when I picked it up, I was just walking into spirituality, just entering that door. And so it was very high level. And I think 95% of it I didn't understand. The little bit that I did understand, that 5%, I picked up this word called meditation. So when I picked up that word, at this time I'd also left my job, and I drove back to Atlanta. And so when I reached Atlanta, I was like, you know what? I want to create a new ritual for myself that included meditation. And so I started meditating slowly. And initially, as everyone knows, meditation is very difficult to continue as a habit, because it's like, like the ocean, where when we're starting to meditate at the very beginning, we're at the top of the ocean where the waves are very turbulent. So there's constantly so much going on in our minds, is nonstop. But I realized as I meditated, I went deeper and deeper into the ocean. And finally, I got to a point where everything was still, and I had these moments of stillness, and then it comes out, and then something else happens, and it creates havoc, and then I go back into that stillness. So it's this cycle right now, and I'm continuously working on it. And so what happened with meditation is it really slowed me down. And because I slowed down, and now after 5-6 years of meditating, I was able to pay attention to the thoughts that are going on in my mind in the moment that the thoughts are coming up. That time I was very unconscious. And so things would happen, I would react, and I would be out of the situation. And maybe a few months later, I'd realize, oh, that thing that happened back then, I could have done something else about it. I could have done it better, things like that. So meditation really helped me slow down. And instead of reacting to something, I could actually respond by taking a pause and taking a break. So when I started meditating, and I got into a situation where I could meditate for like a 9-to-5 job. So I'd start meditating in the morning. I'd take a break in the afternoon, in the lunchtime, and then I'd again have a second session in the afternoon. during these times, I was able to really understand how we are always creating these stories. And that thought came in my mind because I was meditating. Otherwise, I don't think it would have. I wouldn't have understood it the way I do it now. And like an example is, let's say we're at a office party, and we are, uh, we have this arch nemesis at work, right? So we're at this office party in a bowling alley. It's kind of dark, and this guy runs into you, and he spills a drink on you. Now, there's superiors, there's your boss, there's all the people around you, managers, and all that. So you realize that, oh, this guy wants to make you feel bad, make you look bad in front of all these people. So he did it on purpose, and that's the story that this person is creating. But what actually happened is his shoe was untied, and he tripped on himself, and he accidentally dropped the drink on you, but you didn't see that, right? So two different stories. And because I was in this mindset that, oh, this guy is, always after me, he's always wants to do something bad to me, so I created a story based on that. Whereas what actually happened was something totally different, but in my perspective, that didn't show up at all. And so this is the power of storytelling. Now I realized, when I was, in terms of confidence, right, when I was at the job, when I was going through my PhD, I had this story of that I'm not good enough, that I'm, whatever my addition to this world is not valuable, right? And I had that kind of mindset going in. And so when I slowed down, when I was meditating, I kind of understood what I was doing to myself. And sometimes it happens even right now, where I, talk about or respond to situations, and from that sense. Um, and so it's a constant work. It's constantly paying attention to myself, constantly, understanding where is this thought coming from, and then when I understand that, I can then do something about it. So this is how stories have boosted my confidence. And in the last about 6 months to a year, I have been, like, this situation, going live, talking in front of cameras, in front of people. About a year ago, I'd have a very difficult time doing this. I'd get nervous, I'd be sweating in the wrong places, and I wouldn't be able to even get out a sentence, because what happens in these situations, I've realized, is that my conscious mind goes for a hike. And so all of my thoughts, everything just comes up from my subconscious, and I'm like, just like a bumbling idiot at times. So I've had to really slow down, and meditation really helped me to be in the moment, to enjoy it, and in these situations and interviews, to be able to really answer the question, listen to the question and then answer it based on what's needed in the moment. I wasn't able to do that in the past.
Sorry, I was coughing earlier. So I muted, I forgot. So one of the things that, and again, that whole cycle of things happening is that, so yesterday we have a meditation circle that we have every Tuesday. And one of the ladies, when we always do a check-in to see how everybody's doing to start off. And then we go into our meditation. And one of the reasons why we do that is because when we're going in is to be able to kind of just try and help shut down some of the things that are going through. So when we're doing that check-in initially is like, oh, okay, we've got all these things that are going through my mind. So then people have that opportunity to share, and then we move on to doing the meditation. But when we end the meditation, we always do a check-in just to see, because sometimes something will come up for somebody that they want to be able to share, or just checking in to see how things are going. And we have one lady who's been doing this. We've been doing this circle for, I think it's been over a year now. And so one of the things that she had said is that I can actually get into a full relaxation mode. I know that I'm still hearing what you're saying during the meditation. However, I'm like completely relaxed, and it's that practice and being able to continue to do it, and being able to, and because you had talked about the ocean of, and I love that analogy, right? So like, it's really, really rough. So now she's at the bottom of the ocean. So when she goes into that meditative state, she's actually at the bottom of the ocean. Other people see images and hear messages and all these other things. And she's like, I don't get that, but she doesn't have to, she just needs to get to that stillness. And so like, that is really incredible about being able to see that journey and being able to have that happen. And the other thing that I really liked that you had talked about was the story, right? So like one thing happens and we believe that this whole thing is going to happen. And sometimes one of the things that we do is we make up the story before it even happens. So we have this storyline that's happened and we didn't even talk to the person. So we don't even know if the person is going to react the way that your whole story has actually happened as to what it is that's going to happen. And it may be something that be completely opposite to what it is that is going on in your own mind. And so being able to be aware and being conscious of what is it that's happening. So being mindful in the moment, what is it that's happening right now in terms of being able to hear what it is that the person is saying. What is it that they're saying, why, and then being able to then respond to like why, what, where, when, how is where we're able to give that response, and having that opportunity of being able to get there. And so so I love that analogy. I love how you've been able to like really portray how things are going. And I hear that all the time. Oh yeah, you go live all the time. Doesn't mean that I don't get nervous. Doesn't mean that, and it depends on where I am, who I'm going to be meeting with, what is it that's going to happen. And one of the things for Chatting with Wisdom is that you guys never know what my questions are going to be. And I don't know what my questions are going to be either. And that is because I stay present to what the conversation is, and how we're going to kind of move through the conversation based on what's the information, and how are we going to be able to get through. And I know that some people are like, oh yeah, but I want to know the questions ahead of time. The questions ahead of time make it so that it just becomes more stressful, because then it's like, oh, well, we didn't ask that question, or we didn't, and how this happened where I started just doing it. Because initially it was like, I have this list of questions and I'm going to ask the person. And so I'm going through this list of questions, and then I realize I'm asking a question that they've already answered. And I'm like, oh, you already answered that question. And then my brain went into panic mode of like, oh no, now what's going to happen, right? But when we go and meet people on the street, we don't walk around with a script. We don't walk around with a list of questions of, oh, okay, when I walk up to Joe, I'm going to have a conversation, and these are, I'm going to pull out my question list, right? We don't have conversations that way. And so Chatting with Wisdom allows us to be able to have that free flowing conversation, because this is how we're able to be mindful and be present and being in this moment. And that is the only thing that is like, yes, we do need to plan for our future. Yes, we have to have an idea of where we're going roughly, but we don't need to figure out all the details right now as to where that's going to be. We need to figure out the details of what's in my space right now. Am I walking across the road? And when I'm walking across the road, are there cars, right? Like that is what we need to be focusing on more than what are all the fine details. Like, yes, I want to be able to, like, my goal is to be able to buy a property on the beach and be on the water 24/7. And so that's my long term, but I don't need to figure out all the details. I just need to figure out, what am I doing right now? What am I doing in the present moment right this second? And how am I going to be grounded? And what's my next step as to what I need to do right this second, right?
Yeah, that's so true. And to your earlier point about how we have these stories playing out in our mind, and then when, like for example, we'll think about, oh, I don't want to say this thing that I did to my parents or my sibling or my spouse, because they're going to judge me in a certain way, and so we hide this truth for 10, 20, 30 years, and then finally when you get to it and you tell them the truth and be like, oh, you should have told me this a long time ago. Everything would have been, but then we have all these stories created in our mind based on how we think someone else is going to react or respond to what we tell them, right? And I think that's a very interesting situation that people put themselves in, where if they just drop that story or change the story, they could really move out of the conflicts. They could really move out of situations that make them uncomfortable and go into situations that bring them ease. And it's been my journey as well. Every time I get onto an interview, either I'm interviewing someone or they're interviewing me, I'm always have that tinge of nervousness. Even now, even though I've done all this work, it's always there. Why? Because it helps me perform better. It helps me make sure that I'm, in the moment, talking to people and answering the questions the best I can. So yeah, I definitely agree with having this storytelling that pushes you in the direction that you want to go in, but you're not always thinking about that long-term direction, like the house on the beach. you're here in this moment working
Yep.
towards what's best for you right now.
Yeah. And that's really, really important for us to be able to happen, right? So, and those of us who have experienced loss, and so it could be like a physical loss where somebody's died, but like there's the physical loss of like, or I mean, there's the loss of a job, there's the loss of relationships, there's the loss of ourselves. And so being able to stay focused on like, okay, where am I feeling right now? And being allowed and giving yourself permission to be able to feel those feelings, right? So one of the things that unconsciously you were doing initially is that, oh, this kept coming up, this kept coming up. And then when you became conscious of it, it was like, okay, so now I get to indulge in whatever it is. So whether it is a conversation with someone, or it is a walk on the beach, or it is going to play soccer, whatever it is in this moment, and what it is that's happening, and what are the sensations, and doing things consciously allows you to be able to have a much better experience than what's going to happen when if this happens or that happens or this doesn't happen, and etc. Right? So we get to be in the moment, we get to enjoy the time and the space, and really enjoying that time and space with ourselves. And so I think that that's really important for us to take a look at as to how we're going to move forward. So one of the things that that you were talking about is how stories have boosted your confidence, but you also mentioned how we can do this in 2022. How can we make this happen in this year, in terms of being able to increasing our confidence level in doing whatever it is that we want to be doing?
Yeah, I want to talk about really quickly about the story creation mechanism. And I'll give you an analogy. So we're in a movie theater, we're watching this movie on the screen. The screen shows the movie. There's a projector in the back that's projecting this movie onto the screen. The screen and the projector are just the tools. There's a film that's inside the projector that actually contains the essence of the movie. So this same mechanism happens in our lives on a constant basis. There is a projector right here, our third eye, our imagination, that's projecting all of these images based on the stories that are in the film that's inside of us.
Mm-hmm.
The film is, the highlights in your life, the lowlights in your life, the memories, all of those things that you have picked up along the way. That's what the film consists of, right? And that's inside of us. So now our third eye takes this film and uses the data from this film, applies it to different situations, and then projects it onto the different screens in our lives. The different screens are, for example, the people in your life. Those are, each person is a different screen. The situations in your life, each situation is a different screen. The places in your life, each place is a different screen. And so now we are the ones projecting this story onto the different screens in our lives. And so when we can slow down and really pay attention to what are we projecting onto the different situations, onto the different people, then we can really understand what stories we are creating and how we can upgrade those stories to something that's more confident, that's something that gets us in the direction that we want to go in. So what I did is I created this course called the What's Your Story course. And in it, I created something called the My Life Film Chart. And this chart is essentially mapping out your whole life thus far. So going through each of your past experiences, writing down what those experiences are. And then we go through this exercise of deeply understanding how did this particular experience, whether that's a positive experience, whether that's a negative experience, how did this experience make me into who I am today? And do you want to change that if it's a negative experience, or do you want to keep it if it's a positive experience, right? So understanding how our past and has been created through all of these different experiences now helps us really pay attention to what stories we are creating. And once we know all of these past experiences and how these have affected us, we can change our story. We can change our current story of that past experience. We can reframe it. We can rewrite it. And this is a really powerful practice because you are rewriting stories in your subconscious mind. You're rewriting how you perceive and see life, right? And so when you're doing that, now we can, then the next step is to consciously create the future that we want to step into, right? And so it's now understanding what do you value and then creating a future based on what you value. So this step-by-step process of understanding what the past is, what the present is, and what the future can be, we're literally creating a new story for ourselves. We're literally rewriting our future so we can step into that powerful persona that we are, instead of this little guy that we see ourselves currently to be.
And it's really important for us to be able to do that. And I love how you've got things outlined, so that it makes things easier. It's that step-by-step process, and it's probably something that you've had to that you've created. And because of, like you said, unconsciously, I've got all these things that are going on in the background and that are running in the background that are causing me this stomach pain, and that I'm having these issues in my solar plexus of being able to kind of move forward. And so being able to have a plan and an idea of how to be able to take it from point A to point B is incredible. So just while you were chatting earlier, I was on your website to try and find the link, because I normally ask that ahead of time, but I had forgotten before we come on. And so, so I think that I found the right link. So, because I did go on your website to find it, so I'm going to share it here. And so, but if you go onto his website, you'll actually be able to see, and the link for the website is in the comments. But it'll actually take you to the, and then he's got a video. And so I didn't want to play the video while I was listening, because I was trying to be mindful of listening, but I also wanted to get the link to be able to do that. So I think this takes you to the right spot. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay. So yeah, so this is great. So so this will take you to where you need to find that that workshop that he does, or that course. So is this a like an actual class, or is this a self-learning program?
It's a self-learning program. I've created different classwork. So it's a 30-day program, and every day I've created about a 10 to 15-minute video that explains the material for the day, and then there's a short exercise at the end of each day. So every day it's probably a commitment of about 30 minutes. Some days it might be a little longer while we're creating the live film. But most days it's about 30 minutes, and it's very simple. I wanted to create something where I could take someone, like hold their hands and really walk them through this process. And this is my engineering kind of mindset mentality of, let's break this down into really, really small baby steps that I can, people understand one, and then it's not overwhelming, right? You don't want it to be overwhelming, because this whole entire process of really understanding what the past is and how you currently are is overwhelming in and of itself. So I really wanted to make it simple for people. So we'll take small steps, walk in the right direction, and finally, at the end of 30 days, we will have created a full live film chart, which gives us all of our past memories, along with how each of these past memories has affected us. What can we change? What can we keep? And what do we want to keep for the future? And then outlining what our future looks like. What do we want to create in these different life aspects? So there are 7 or 8 different life aspects that we're working through, 7 different life aspects, and we can create a new future based on each of these life aspects, so that we are kind of holistically looking at our life. So that's the purpose of this class, is let's switch our stories to something that's putting us in the right direction.
Nice. And I really like that. So I like how that happens. And so I also noticed that it's on discounted right now. So if you are listening to this today on May 18th, you may want to go and take a look, because I think it was $33 that it was set at. So for those of us who are Canadian, that's a little more than that, but not a whole lot more. But yeah, so definitely if you're listening to this today, then definitely go in and take a look and have that opportunity. So is there anything else that you think is really important for us to know before we head out?
Yeah, one thing I'd say that's that's not related to storytelling, but I think it's an essence of life, and that is to drink water. So the part of my title is water doctor, right? So my PhD, the way it originated is my PhD is in water engineering. So the water that comes into our house for drinking, that's kind of what I was looking at throughout my PhD. Well, now what I do is I've modified that and changed the story around the term. And I'm saying instead of the engineering aspect, I'm just reminding people to drink water. The reason I do that is, I read this book called Our Bodies Many Cries for Water. And it's written by this Persian doctor who was thrown in jail in the late 80s, early 90s during the revolution. And while he was in jail, he saw the prisoners that were fatigued. They were laying on against their backs against the wall, laying on the floor, really tired, really like lack of energy, having a lot of pain. And so he finally realized what it was, and he fed them in just water. You give them a little bits of water, and within 3 to 6 hours, I'm talking about hours, 3 to 6 hours, he was able to see a noticeable difference.
Yeah.
Like not even days. It was literally the effect was right away, and they were able to walk and be a whole new person at that point. And so thus began his exploration into the importance of water in our lives. And what he found is that about 50% of the common diseases that exist out there right now, if you just drink enough water, it'll take care of those diseases. All those pains, those migraines, those headaches, the ulceritis, all of those little things, it'll take care of that. And so to that, what I want to do is I want everyone to pick up our waters and let's.
So here's mine.
There we go. Cheers. That's
Cheers.
the Canadian.
Yeah, I didn't have my glass. Normally I'm drinking water throughout, having my cup throughout, but I didn't want to drink from the big bottle. I drink from the big bottle when I'm not on live. So, but I usually pour it into my cup when I'm on a live. So, but otherwise I just walk around with my Ninja Red bottles that are filled with water. And so that's what I do, is to make sure that I do drink enough water, because that's also really important as well. And so I love that. And so being able to remind myself, because I drink 3 of these minimum a day, or at least I try to, right? So like my goal is to make sure that I do that. So when it's in the big bottle, then it at least helps me to remember that I've got that much more water to drink. So.
Oh, that's perfect. And that's a big bottle. So like reminds you to drink water. It's like, bam, right in place.
It is. And that's why I said, okay, well, I guess I'm using this because I don't have my glass.
It looks like an alcohol bottle, like a vodka
I know.
bottle.
That's what I get told all the time. It looks like a gin bottle, apparently. And it's definitely water, because I can just guzzle it down. I definitely cannot guzzle down gin. That would be a little too toxic for me, I would think. But so it's Ninja Red from Young Living. And so I drink it from the bottle. So it's red typically. So people, when it's red, people think that it's wine. So when it's white, when it's just clear with water, then people are thinking that I'm drinking vodka or something. So so I've got my whole bottle. I have one of my clients are always, whenever I'm on, she's like, so do you have your vodka or do you have your tequila? So those are that's one of the jokes that she has all the time, because that is what it looks like. But it definitely is water. So thank you so much for joining me, and thanks so much, and looking forward to hearing others who are going to share their stories about how this experience has really worked for them. So definitely the link is in the comments. And for those of you who are catching this on the podcast, if you go to the description of the podcast, we'll have the link of the website link, and then you can definitely find it from there. So thanks again. And I will be back next week for Chatting with Wisdom. Bye for now.
Thank you so much.